All right. Hello, everyone. So make sure I get my light. Okay, I think that works. All right. Hello, everyone. It's your girl Gabrielle. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. We I don't even know what to say. If you're watching this on video, once again, I am doing this from my car. So bear with me. If you're an entrepreneur, sometimes, you got to just take life as it comes and, make it work, make the dream work. All right. So let me tell you what this podcast is about. So this is a podcast where we like to have real talk about real things. We like to focus on certain areas. We like to focus on education, empowerment, self care, entrepreneurship, employment. We tend to focus on those topics. And today is no different. So I am looking forward to this episode because I have a returning guest. And let me tell you who my returning guest is. Let me just look for her banner. All right. So my returning guest is Sandra Jeffrey. She's been with me for the past couple of episodes, so I encourage you to check out those episodes. She was with me on Talking with Tutors Part 7, and she was with me on Study Abroad Part 2. So I encourage you to check out those previous episodes. But today, we are going to talk about challenging Black stereotypes in the US and abroad. So we're continuing our conversation about um, representation abroad, international representation. And today we are going to have this discussion about Black stereotypes in the United States as well as in other countries. So I'm looking forward to this discussion and I'm curious to see where this will go. And let me just remind you about Sandra Jeffrey. So she is an international education advocate and her mission is to encourage people, especially people of color, to step out of their comfort zone. All right, so without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and bring her to the stage.
Hi,
Hi, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Okay, trying to get my layout. Okay, all right. So, sorry, bear with me. I'm trying to fix my layout. So, all right. All right, so thank you for coming back to Hot Topics.
I'm happy to
You
be
know,
back.
you're coming back to the hot seat, so I guess you're comfortable with the hot seat. So we're gonna talk about Black stereotypes in the U.S. and abroad. So I wanted to hear your take on that topic.
Well, as someone who started studying abroad, for example, since the early 90s, the perception of me as a Black woman traveling overseas and specifically to China was uncommon, surprising, unsupported, and just just something I shouldn't do. I had gotten responses from neighbors and people I know who said, one, don't go abroad. There's no reason for me to go abroad. There's no Black people abroad, and I need to stay home. There's no reason for me to go abroad. And that plays into this perception that Black people shouldn't travel abroad, unfortunately. And it depends on your circle, but at that time, that was my circle of people. And I met people of different backgrounds. Some people were supportive, but there were a lot of people who didn't remember what country I went to or questioned why I would even go abroad if I live here in the United States. So that was the initial issue in terms of stereotyping, in terms of what we should do and stepping out of that comfort zone, and the perception that we should not travel abroad because that's just not what we do. So that was the initial perception and stereotype is Black people don't go abroad. When I applied for my first, my scholarships, the Rotary Scholarship, I did it through the Harlem office. And it was a lot of people were surprised. Rotary. was very supportive of me traveling abroad, because that was part of changing those stereotypes of African Americans and people of color not going abroad. So, in an attempt to change and modify those stereotypes, I was encouraged by some people, especially on the board of Rotary, to travel abroad. And when I got to China, that was gave me a whole cultural shock, because there was this perception of Black people, Black women, in China, because they had never seen, a lot of them had never seen a Black person, in person before. So, they just were in awe of me many, many times. People would run from me sometimes, and my understanding and my grace about it is that it was just not experiencing it. When you haven't experienced something different from your own, you stare. And it's not in a. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it and make it beautiful, because it wasn't. But I also understand, if you've never seen someone look completely different from what you look like, you're going to stare. I can understand that, but then also once I get into a conversation with them, then they realize, oh, you're just like me. You eat, put on your pants one leg at a time. So we have more similarities. So once you get past that perception, that ignorance, right, that lack of knowledge about another person's, or that perception of a race, once people get past that, then the stereotype goes away and you see commonalities between people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that um I guess when I went abroad, because I mentioned before that I went to Italy,
Hmm.
it's kind of funny because um it didn't occur to me to think about um myself as a Black person, I
Mm.
guess, because not that I thought that I was white, but like I thought I was, I don't know how to describe it. I guess the thought in my head was, you're Black anywhere you go. So I guess that kind of counters what I just said earlier. But like it's, you're Black anywhere you go in the world. And but when I went to Italy, it was like it's interesting to see like the Black struggle, quote unquote, is different in every country. Um so like when I went to Italy, it was like uh, the Black people were from Africa. They were
Right,
African immigrants, and so when
right,
people approached me or they looked at me, they're like, are you from Africa? I'm like, no, I'm American, and they're like, what? so
right, right.
so did you get that? Because you've talked about it before in our previous episodes about. I was saying it's more like positive racism or positive stereotypes, or people would be curious about you, right?
Yeah,
Um,
curiosity is a not it's all of that, right? But it's also, as the recipient of it, it becomes frustrating sometimes. Sometimes everybody has good and bad days, but after a while, when you're constantly getting this level of what are you, or you're not American, or saying the N word, not really, but kinda, because you can get away with it because of how Chinese, because of how you say things in Chinese.
mhm.
After a while that gets annoying, because you're a human being and you actually have feelings, right? So it's positive. I don't want to say positive racism, because that's not something I would say. I just say there's a level of ignorance that you can handle or deal with, because you're educating, right? Your role is, because I always thought my role is to educate at that level. So I don't
Yeah.
have a problem with that. But also, I need to take myself out of that situation when it becomes overwhelming, because when you're getting people running at you and saying, "Oh, what are you, and what are you?" It becomes overwhelming, because you're still a human being, or someone just calling you, hey black person," like that becomes a little too much, because you're a human being.
Right. And I understand that it's like it just makes you think about how Black people are perceived
Yeah.
in other countries, and it's sort
Right.
of, so I'm wondering, is that due to um I mean, is there such thing as there's not a lot of black people in other countries? So I feel like in America, um, I just feel like, oh, it's common to see a black person. Like you don't really think about it. But then when you go to like China or Italy, or maybe it may not be so bad in the UK, but in terms of like um, rephrase my wording. But when you go to like China or Italy, is there such thing as there's not a lot of black people?
Well, there's a couple of things, right? One, it's the media, right? Perception is coming from television and newspapers and the media. And so everybody's getting the newspapers, right? So they only see a certain image of what the media puts out. So in movies, for example, I remember being at a friend's dormitory and we were watching a movie and it was of Africa, somewhere in Africa. And my friend that I was with, she was Nigerian. She said, "That's not what Africa looks. That's not what my home looks like." And it's it was just people living in trees and this whole Tarzan look of
Yeah.
Africa. That she said that can't be Africa because that's not what my home looks like, right? But because this is television, right, and they're giving off this image of of black people, right, because we're not in control of that media, right? And so because we're not in control of that, that the what's given out about us, this is what people are seeing. And so that's where a lot of the perception is. Are there I feel like every country I go to, there's always black people. I'm never um nervous or reluctant to travel somewhere to say, oh, there's not going to be any black people there. I've met people, students who are studying in Russia at the time, a long time ago, or studying when I went to Spain. I saw people study, there's a community of Africa. We're all over the place. Finding them is, one challenge. But I also know not everybody is living in the city. A lot of people from the rural areas don't get that opportunity to go to the bigger cities. So they are the ones that, are usually shocked and surprised when they see a person of color because we come in so many different hues. They're a little
Yeah.
confused because they're not accustomed to that because their hue is one color, I guess, or one hue. So they don't have that multi-level of complexions and hair textures and looks that we have. And so a lot of times they're surprised. They never believe, as you mentioned earlier, that I'm American. I'm black. Black people only come from Africa, but that's not true. Our descendants, our ancestors, are from Africa. But then obviously there was a slave trade, the Middle Passage. So we were dropped off, right? And so because my family's from the Caribbean, so sometimes I'll say I'm from the Caribbean, and then sometimes I'm saying I'm from America, so that they're aware that black people are in the Caribbean and they're in America, not only Africa. So I think a lot of things play in as part of that conversation, so that people are aware that there are black people everywhere. But do we need more black people to travel? Absolutely, because what happens is once more black people travel abroad, when a lot more people get to engage with them, it's good for both sides, right? It's for the person of color, for to broaden their perspective of the world, and for the local person to meet a person from another country and realize, oh wow, there's so much more than my own country or my community. There's a big world out there. So it benefits each side in a positive way.
Right. And it also it it does expose other people to different races, right?
Yes.
Because when you're so used to seeing one skin color, one set of ethnic features, right,
Right.
and then all of a sudden here's there's this curveball, and
Right.
here comes this person that's completely different from you. You're like, what? And they're looked at like an alien,
Yeah.
right? Or even like depending on like the media. If again, if you've never seen certain ethnic features, certain skin colors, or all you know about them is on the media, and then all of a sudden they come into your backyard, it's like, whoa, you're dangerous, you're scary, like in that movie that I saw.
Yeah. Which movie? Do you
Oh, I was
remember?
just saying. Oh,
Oh, okay.
I was just
Yeah.
throwing that out, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've had
mhm,
people in China run from me because they were shocked, and scared. And, I would, after they recover, I would come up and say hello, and they're like, oh, wait, but then I also have Chinese friends and their family that welcome me into their homes. And there was never an issue, where I stayed in their home, welcomed me, fed me, all of that. So, it's two sides of the coin that exist. And nothing is black and white, right? It's not, everybody's always ignorant and everybody, no, it's never that way. It's some people are not aware and some people are more aware than others. And the people who are more aware than others, they're not frightened or nervous or reluctant to meet someone outside of their race. Where the people who are not accustomed to it because they come from a smaller community, they are more reluctant, which is understandable. And I think that that is applicable to all communities, right? Because when you come from a rural area, you're just not used to seeing people that are different from you. I mean, even if we're from New York City and we see a green person walking down the street, I mean, in New York, it's a little different because we may see a person, somebody with green paint because it's New York, but we would still be shocked, right? We would still look at the person and stare a little because we've never really seen it. We've heard people do that, but we've never seen it in person. And so if we're in the village or somewhere in the city or whatever, and we see that, we'll be surprised. And say, tell somebody, guess who I saw today? I saw a person that had green skin. And that's extreme. But for some people coming from rural communities, whether it's China or in America, right? Because if you've never seen, you'll still be shocked and want to tell the story to somebody or stare because you're in awe because it's you haven't experienced. But once you go abroad, whether it's going to China or going from China to another country, that awareness, that global exposure, completely shifts your perception of other communities.
So when you went to China, did you feel that the stereotypes, like how you were treated in China? I guess let me put it this way. So, do you think that racial prejudice is the same anywhere you go in the world?
Well, it doesn't. Yes and no, right? Because the racism in the United States has a different history than the racism abroad. The racism in the United, however, the perception of Black people, it may be the same, right? Because everyone knows that Black people are not treated at the highest level around the world. That's why Africa is treated the way they're treated. A lot of the different countries globally, for international efforts, etc. Um, but when we, um, but I think when you go abroad, it just changes everything. It just allows you to get to be open, and then people are just more open about meeting you and communicating with you, and they're curious. So one thing I love about being in China is that they will come up to you. Chinese people will come up and have a conversation with you. So some people, like I said, nothing is black and white, but some people will come up out of their curiosity to have a conversation with you, whereas others may not, and that's because people are people, right? That's not really about Chinese or non-Chinese. Some people are curious more than others. Some people start speaking in English and Chinese. It depends, but that curiosity is there so that they can engage with you, so that they can get to know who you are. I hope I answered the question, or maybe not.
Uh,
And if I
Yeah,
didn't, just ask me again and I'll answer it.
well, I guess because the thinking that I had, and something just came to me too. Like, so, when I went to Rome, and there were these speakers that came in, and they were all white. Someone, a fellow student asked, how, I guess, like, I don't remember what he said exactly, but it was to the effect of, like, how are Black people treated here in Italy? And um and I guess, like, I never, because I don't know, I guess I just had this idea of, like, are there Black people here? So I guess, like, I had that thought in my head, like, are there Black people here? But yeah, but then that, the speaker responded like, yeah, there's black people here, and there's interracial marriages, and so it's like it's pretty common. But I guess the fact that the classmate had to ask that question
Right.
made you think that, oh, like it's how black people are treated in America is different than in other countries, and there's this idea of like there's not enough black people abroad in other countries.
Yeah, I think in China, uh, I it's not always positive, I should say, and sometimes it is positive, right? So there are some times when you're in China, because you have this great experience with your Chinese classmates and your Chinese friends. You have this great experience with them, engaging with them, and you're like excited and happy. And then the next day, somebody's ignoring you, or you're applying for a job, or you go to a job interview and they tell you, oh, you're not qualified for something, and you're like, I have a graduate degree and I can't teach English, something like that. And you're allowing they only want English speakers to teach English, but they're allowing somebody else from a different country where English is not their first language to teach English, and that's because that person is Caucasian. So you have days like that as well. Just like here in the United States, we experience, might be a different level of racism or biases in the United States, but that still exists. So not like I said, it's not black and white at all. There are good days and there are bad days, just like it is here in the US. But there
Right.
should be more black people studying abroad and traveling, period. And I think there is an increase, a tremendous increase of African Americans in particular who are traveling abroad, because there are these, different groups that didn't exist back when I started traveling abroad, blacks abroad, or just different groups I noticed on Facebook of people, blacks in this country, blacks in Thailand, blacks in Taiwan, which I find extremely, like, it's just a beautiful thing to witness that there are these support groups. And there's a network, right? You need to have a network so that people get to meet, more African Americans that are studying abroad or living abroad now, because that's also increased tremendously of African Americans living in a foreign country that's not, an African country per se, but is in Asia or Europe. And I think that's a great thing.
So I mean, you bring up an interesting point with because of social media, people are finding each other,
Yes.
right? So um, you would so there's a sense of, I guess, belonging, and a sense of, you're not alone. Let's meet up. And I think because, I mean, yeah, there's there's the pros and cons to social media, but one of the pros is, again, people are able to find each other. People
Yeah.
are able um to meet up with each other. So there's a sense of like you're not alone, even in this other country, and even the fact that there has to be a Facebook group for blacks in Taiwan, like you said, blacks in China, like the the necessity of a Facebook group shows that there's something there in terms of pe- knowing that people are not alone in these countries.
Yeah. I mean, when I was there, I didn't have there were no groups like that because there was no Facebook. And so I would just see a random black person on the street and start talking to them. Regardless of whatever country I was in, I would just have a conversation with them, and that's how I would connect. If I was on the campus, most of the African students I connected with, they were studying, getting their master's or medical degree, et cetera, there. So I would say, "Oh, where did you get your hair braided?" To the black women. Or do you know? Or if I met an African man, I said, "Do you know any African women here who are getting their hair braided?" Some type of icebreaker, right, to start the conversation. Or I say, "Just what time is it?" Or just say hello. You know, because or I met somebody on the bus, or somebody one time ran up to me because she had been in Taiwan for months and she hadn't seen a black person, and she's like, "You're the first black person that I've seen in like 6 months," and that was exciting. So that's how traditionally, or at least I did back in the day. That's how I connected and met people. Or somebody would tell me, "Oh, there's a black person, or there's a black family that work for this company, and they're looking for young people to hang out with, or connect with. And so we were able to find each other. I don't think that's ever been the case. I mean, we're always able to find each other. That's why I'm never worried. Any country I go to, if I need that outlet, I can find it. But I don't have to stick to it. At the end of the day, it's whoever you connect with is whoever you connect with, whether it's black, white, or Chinese. Whoever you connect with is who you connect with at the end of the day. But sometimes you do need that outlet, because there are some levels of frustration when you travel abroad that some groups don't connect with. Because you are black, because as a black woman, or a black person, these are my experiences, and my Caucasian friends, they may go through their own, but it wouldn't be the same as mine. And I know that from my friends who have told me that directly.
So when you were in China, did you meet with did you meet black people who were from China that actually like lived in China?
When you say
Like like,
from China, what do you mean?
like not other students, but actually like residents of China.
Well, so I was a resident at one time when I lived there.
Uh-huh.
So, because my visa was allowing me to be a resident there. So I think living in a certain place, everything is temporary, right? Because you always have the ability to move. So nothing is forever, right? So while I was in China, I was considered a resident at that time because my visa said so. So I met a lot of people who lived in China for extended and short periods of time. Some people were students, some people were, entrepreneurs, business owners, etc. in China, and they were African American. Yes, I met that in different cities.
So how did how did they identify themselves? Like, did they consider themselves Chinese? Did
No,
they consider themselves black? How did
no,
they
I don't know
identify
any.
themselves?
I don't know any black person who considered themselves Chinese, because they're not. They would still be from wherever country they are from. However, people who were mixed, black and Chinese, they were either they're actually born in China, right? So there, it's a little different. So the people, I do have some friends who, like in Taiwan, I had a girlfriend who I met that was, her mom was Taiwanese and her dad was black, and but she was raised in Taiwan. So
Mhm.
she's Taiwanese. She wasn't born in the States. She's not American. She's Taiwanese. She was born and raised in Taiwan. I don't even know where her dad was from. I don't remember, that story. But for generally, if you're an immigrant, if anything, right?
Mhm.
You're actually an immigrant. So if you're coming from, Nigeria or any country, like myself, coming from America, and I had a resident visa in China, I'm still an American. I'm not Chinese, and China's not considering you Chinese either, because you're not born there, and you're
Right.
not of Chinese descent either. So I cannot naturalize myself like we can in the United States to become a Chinese citizen, or yeah, to become a Chinese citizen.
All right. So I mean, I guess what I was thinking before, I'm talking about people who were like born in China, black people who were born in China, right? So
Well,
I'm just
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just wondering, like, would they consider themselves black people or would they consider themselves Chinese
Well, they
for
would
people?
that usually, from my understanding of people who are mixed race, they usually consider themselves both, right? They don't exclude any side of their family. So they'll say they're Taiwanese and black, or Chinese and African, or Chinese and Zambian, whatever country they're from. They try not to exclude one side over the other. For example, in Guangzhou, which is South China, and Canton, which is not too far from Hong Kong, there's it's called Little Africa, and that community. So when I first moved to China, I lived in that area in Guangzhou, and that's where I studied Chinese. It's a province, and now 20 some odd years later, that community is called Little Africa, and because there is a huge influx of African men who married Chinese women and had children. There are schools, etc., of mixed race children who are Chinese and African. And so I haven't been there since I left in the early 90s, or been back there since the early 90s. But there are articles, from a lot of articles written about Little Africa in Guangzhou. And that community, their children are Chinese and African.
Oh,
Hmm.
okay. Okay. So you mentioned it a few times, like you want to encourage people of color, especially young people, to travel abroad. So why is that so important to you?
For me, I because of what it did for my personality or my just from as a young woman growing up, I was very insecure as a young woman, and when I went abroad, it just blossomed me. I was empowered. I felt strong. I felt I could do anything because out of my community, I was the only one who decided to take this chance, take this risk, and go to China, not Africa, not the Caribbean, but to China. And I made it. I lived it. I did it. And because of that, I wanted everybody to have that same feeling that I got. And it did that for me. And I encourage more students to do it. And once I encourage more students to do it and friends to do it, when they came back or while we're abroad, I can see the flip, the change in their perception of themselves and what they can do, just by traveling to another country. It's empowering. And because of that empowerment, I want more people to do it. Because I want everybody to have this feeling, this great feeling that I have. I want to share. I want everybody to feel this great about themselves, about trying things. You try new things. The type of person that's willing to try almost anything. Why? Because food. You know, for example, I've never heard of chicken and just for an example, chicken and peanuts. We in the Caribbean we don't make food chicken and peanuts together. That's not a traditional Caribbean dish, right? But in China it is. But you know what? For me, the way I rationalize it, I know what chicken tastes like. I know what peanuts taste like. I wonder what it tastes like together. Okay, I'll try it. It's chicken and peanuts. It's not gonna like destroy, it's just food. So I'm very open minded when it comes to trying. I'm adventurous. And I think traveling abroad allows you to open this adventurous arm of your mind so that you try new things and then you grow from it. You come up with different perspectives of things at work that your colleagues didn't because you traveled abroad. And I think it's just helpful.
So when you say it's empowering, what do you mean?
Um, what do I mean by empowering? Empowering, it just fills me with encouragement. It fills me with opening my mind to possibilities. It it gives me a positive outlook on life of what I can do and I'm just more optimistic about life. And that's what I'm thinking in terms of empowerment means when you study abroad.
Right. Yeah, because like sorry, there's an echo. Um because I think I said it in the first meeting that we met. I feel like um we tend to want to stay in our city. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, the volume is too loud.
So you can
Okay.
hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was saying was people tend to uh you know s- stay in their own city, you know, or let alone their own state, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
let alone their own country, right?
Yeah.
So people barely leave, and so when you have, I mean, especially minorities, people of color, we worked hard to get to this country. Now we're trying to leave, um, but
Right.
so now when you travel abroad to different countries, it's you said like it opens up possibilities, like you see different types of people and different types of food, and you're speaking different languages and you're seeing different cultures, so you're you're expanding your mind and you're looking at other ways to interact with people, and you're not just
Yeah.
stuck to one view, right, but you see
Right.
multiple different views,
Yep.
especially when you travel abroad.
Yeah. It gives you this confidence that, I could do anything, this power that I can do anything and literally no one can stop you but you. That's what it does for you. And if you want to do something, what it did for me, I found scholarships to go abroad. No one could tell me that I wasn't going to China. I know some of my friends weren't, they didn't know why I was interested in this whole China thing, but they couldn't tell me no. And even if they did say no, I was like, okay, I went, found my money on my own, right? It empowered me. It gave me the confidence to look for money on my own, programs, scholarships, the plane ticket, etc., to do it because I wanted to do it. And that's what, it just fills you with this sense of authority over yourself to do things that you want to because it's
Yeah.
interesting.
So, would you ever, if you had to choose between living in America and living in China, which would you pick?
I think it depends on what stage of your life you're in, right? Well, and everyone is different. I'm some people they wanted to stay, have their family, get married, have their family early in life, and now they're traveling, right? I did the reverse. I did it early as a youngster, and now I'm staying in the States for now. But that could change tomorrow because I think everything is temporary. You could live in one place for 15 years and then decide, okay, I want to travel for 5 years. And then for 5 years, you travel and then you stop. And then for another 10 years, you stay in another local place. So I can't really give you a definite answer and say, I would rather live in one country, live abroad than live in the United States. It depends on, you know, what's going on in my life at that time. Right now, I'm in the US, but if I get an opportunity to go abroad, maybe I don't know. It depends on the opportunity and the circumstances of my life in the U.S.
Hmm. So depending on what's going on in your life.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I'm open to travel again to more, to live in a different country. I lived in Asia for a very long time, so maybe this time I'll be interested in South America or Europe, or maybe go back to Asia. I think sky's the limit. I'm really not limited at all um, to go anywhere because it's there. The world is to be traveled to and to learn.
Okay. So, I mean, going back to an earlier point, so what do you understand about the living conditions of China, particularly for Black people, like getting housing, getting jobs, things like that?
Well, a lot of that depends on what you're looking for. So some people, if their company sends them over, they're obviously in a good position. If you go over, um, if I initially went over in a program as studying Chinese at my school, and then after my program was completed, I decided to stay, and I found an apartment with a classmate, and we just looked for a local Chinese apartment there. And you can get a Western style or Chinese style or in the middle. So it depends on what you can afford. I got something in the middle, and I got an apartment with my Chinese friend in a Chinese building. I mean, all the buildings are Chinese, but it was just an average Chinese apartment. It was just an apartment. And then later on, when I started working for our organization, um, I got an upgrade. I upgraded to a two-bedroom flat. So it all depends on your circumstances. But sometimes I got it on my own. Sometimes there's listings in the newspaper. There was sometimes you do it through your friends, of course, if you know anybody that's looking for a roommate or looking to leave their apartment. The thing about China is transient, right? People are always leaving because they're in a program or they're working and their program or their job is over or they're ready to go back home. So you put the word out that you're looking for an apartment, and somebody will say, "Oh, my friend is leaving," or "My friend's apartment is available." You could go online. The Beijinger is one of the newspapers that you go online to the website, and people list their apartments. Or you just look for a real estate agent like they do, in the U.S. and someone says, "Oh, they have an apartment to rent." So it's typical like how they are here. So there's no housing for foreigners and housing for locals. You could just find an apartment whatever you're interested in or can afford.
And what about employment?
Um,
Employment, jobs, businesses.
so sometimes that's challenging depending on your industry. There's a lot of English is a lot of foreigners are teaching English in China. Sometimes that's challenging depending on the school, the program. I didn't really teach Chinese, I mean English in China. I didn't go to China to teach English, so with I'm not very familiar with the process of the school that the teaching school. There's a lot of schools in China where you can teach English, and so there are a lot of them bring them from the states. You can get a contract from the U.S. and teach China, and they find housing for you. And I've heard there's been some challenges. Some of the parents don't want a black teacher, and the schools try to mold you in a way so that the parents are more receptive to a black teacher. But then some of them have black teachers and they love them. So nothing is black and white when it comes to that. Depending on your industry, you can start your own company. I have a lot of friends in China who have their own company. A friend of mine, before the pandemic, she's from Belize, and she started a restaurant, a Chinese fusion restaurant in Shanghai. And, that was well received, because she started her own restaurant with a Chinese partner. So it all depends on what industry that you're interested in working in.
Awesome, awesome. All right, we're going to start to wind things down. But before we do that, I see we have a comment. Miss Jeffrey sounds like she rooted into the progression of her people.
Mhm.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Rob Swinger. All right, so we're coming to the end here. So do you know the drill?
Yeah.
What are your words of wisdom? What would you like to share with our audience? Any parting words, lasting thoughts?
My words of wisdom, and I thank you again for allowing me to be on your podcast. This has been such a wonderful experience. My words of wisdom is again to take the leap because it encourages you, empowers you, and it gives you a lot of confidence, and it's fun. So travel abroad.
Simply put, there we go. All right, Sandra, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for coming back
Thank
to
you.
Hot Topics.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
so let me look for your banner here. All right, so let's get your promo. There you are. All right, you guys. So Sandra Jeffrey, she is on Instagram. She got two Instagram accounts. So the first one is Chattin' Connectin'. That's ChattenConnectin. That's Instagram. Chattin' Connectin'. The second one is Shangjie57. So I'm gonna spell that out as well. That's SHANGJIE57. So I encourage you to follow her on both of her Instagram accounts. She has her own business. She teaches Chinese. So if you are looking to improve your Chinese language skills, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced, you want your kids speaking Chinese, you got to write that 10-page paper in Chinese. You gotta do a presentation in Chinese. Sandra is your girl. So look her up on Instagram. She has two Instagram accounts. I encourage you to reach out to her as well. You can also call her at 404-828-0086. You could also email her at info@chatconnect.com. So that's info, the little at symbol, then it's ChatConnectConnect.com. So, give her an email, give her a call, follow her on both of her Instagram accounts. If you're looking for if you're looking for a tutor for
Mhm.
Chinese. I'm thinking Chinese tutor.
Mhm.
No, wait, you gotta you gotta watch the order of the words. So if you're looking for a tutor for Chinese, no matter what level you're in, beginner, intermediate, advanced, young, old, black, white, purple, green, whatever
Mhm.
whatever you're looking for, hit up Sandra. She does virtual tutoring.
Mhm.
So, she does virtual tutoring. She also does in-person tutoring for her local area, which is Atlanta, Georgia, right?
Yes.
All right, so Atlanta, Georgia. If you happen to be in Atlanta right now, and you're looking for a tutor for Chinese, look her up. She does in-person sessions. But for the rest of the country, and then I'm assuming you do international sessions as well?
I can do international sessions.
Okay, so for our international listeners, our international audience, wherever you are in the world, hit up Sandra. If you're looking to improve them Chinese skills, I encourage you to look her up, you guys. So that information is scrolling below at the bottom of your screen for my video people. And for my audio people, I did not forget about you. All of this information is in the description. All right, Sandra, is there anything else you want to share about your business or anything you want
I
to promote?
I have a promo. I think you're going to play, and I also sell T-shirts that says Chinese language, Chinese words. It's in English and Chinese phonetics, and also Chinese characters. It's fun looking, shirts so you can show that you speak a little bit of Chinese. Cute Chinese phrases.
And where can people get those t-shirts?
Also on my Instagram page, chatting and connecting.
All right, so you're looking for a t-shirt, you need some clothes. Hey, it's the holiday season. I mean, depending on when you're watching this, but
Mhm.
so you need a birthday present, you need a Christmas present, you need a Hanukkah present, you need a Kwanzaa present, whatever holiday you need a present, get them t-shirts. It's a great gift, right? It's a great gift to give to somebody. Go to her Instagram page. Which one? The Chat and Connecting one?
Yes, chatting and connecting.
All right, so go to Chat and Connecting. Go to that Instagram page. Get them t-shirts, you guys. All right, so now I'm gonna play your promo right now.
Yeah.
Ni hao, I speak Mandarin Chinese. That's right. I recommend chatting and connecting. Chatting and Connecting is an international education consulting organization that advises students on scholarships to study abroad. Their premier program, Chatting in Chinese, teaches Mandarin Chinese in a structured, fun, and easy way. You will learn the numbers, introductions, and other common phrases, along with the ability to read and write Chinese characters. The Chatting in Chinese program teaches both private and group classes for adults and children. For more information, go to Chatting and Connecting on Instagram. That's Chat and Connect with 2 T's and the letter N. Or email at info@chatconnect.com for the upcoming class schedule.
All right, all right, all right. All right, so that's it for your promo. So Sandra, thank you again for coming on Hot Topics. This is
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you.
All right, share. All right. Get my little Chinese in. All right, I'll put you backstage now. Okay. All right, and let me get my banner up. Excuse me. All right, you guys, so that is it. We have reached the conclusion of yet another episode. I think we're on 168, 169, somewhere in the upper 160s. So we made it through yet another episode. Thank you so much for joining me on this ride. This has been an amazing journey. I love having this platform to talk about international issues, talking about race issues, talking about living disabilities, homeschooling. I love having this platform to talk about things that people either don't really talk about or they only talk about it in small circles, but to have this platform to bring those, secret conversation. I don't know if I want to call it a secret, but to bring those conversations to a public forefront, I definitely love having the ability to do that. And this is the podcast to make that happen. All right. So, it's definitely a journey. It's definitely an experience. I've definitely learned a lot doing all this. So thank you again, you guys, for coming on the podcast. And whether you're listening on like Spotify or Apple, or you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you are taking in the sound of my voice, thank you for coming on this journey with me. So I want to let you guys know that as a reminder, Hot Topics is a production of my company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So if you are looking for a tutor, whether it's for yourself, because we also serve adults, or for your child is struggling with, turning in that homework assignment, or they're not focusing, or they're falling behind them, they're falling behind their classmates. Your teacher just called and said, your kid is promotion in doubt. We've definitely heard pretty much everything there is. Any kind of difficulty, if you're looking for a tutor, reach out to us. You can find us on our website. It is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. You can also send us an email, success@astepaheadtutoringservices.com. You can also call us 347-762-2838. You can also find us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Eventbrite, and WhatsApp. So just type in A Step Ahead Tutoring Services and we will pop up right there. So I encourage you to find us, especially social media. Find us on social media, follow us, stay in touch with us. Stay in touch with hot topics, stay in touch with anything and everything that has to do with the Step Ahead Tutoring Services. But I will emphasize our website again. So if you are looking for any tutoring services, we do one-on-one tutoring, test prep, college counseling, editing and proofreading. We have our own virtual workshops. We cover a lot of different grounds. So if you are looking for any of these things, reach out to us. Our website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. And while you're at it, sign up for our hot topics text list. Right, we have a text list about our podcast. You will learn about upcoming episodes, live episodes. If you love this show, you love our previous episodes, stay in touch with us. Sign up for our text list. All you have to do is text the code hot topics to 917-764-3975. Again, just text the code Hot Topics to 917-764-3975. I hope to see you on that text list. And finally, I'm going to issue you guys a challenge. I want you to share this episode with at least 2 of your friends, right? I want this episode going far and wide. I want it going viral. I want it reaching to the ends of the earth. So I'm posing that challenge to you guys. I want you to share this episode with at least 2 people. Let's get this episode going out far and wide. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me again. I'm your girl, Gabrielle. I look forward to you joining me at the next episode. Thank you again, you guys. This is awesome. And now I am signing off. Bye, you guys.